This is the first episode of an intended series on mysterious and unidentified people, about a serial killer and some of the mysteries that he left buried. We know exactly who the killer was: Robert Christian Hansen, the butcher baker, the most prolific serial killer in Alaska's history. He was tried, convicted, and died in prison back in 2014. The problem? We know who he was, but we still don't know the names of all of his victims. Before we proceed further, please note that this video will contain brief mentions of violence against women. Viewer discretion is advised. 24 miles northeast of Alaska's capital lies Eklutna. It's a small village, known mostly for its ever-shrinking lake of the same name, which is also located within the third-largest state park in the United States. This 800-year-old settlement is popular with outdoorsmen, but when the hunting seasons end and the campers leave, Eklutna is home to a population of less than 100 people. Eklutna is one of those places nestled far away in its own obscure little corner of the world, that people like you and I will seldom have reason to think about. And yet it was here, over 40 years ago, that a gruesome discovery was made, and a tragic mystery with ties to a brutal murderer was born. The year was 1980. It was July 21st. It's the warmest month of the year, the temperature in the low 60s. Against the woods ran a power line from the nearby power plant. Linemen from Anchorage Power and Light went on about their day until a closer look around the area brought their attention to something odd. The thaw of snow revealed the earth beneath it. They could see now that something had been buried there. They started digging. Soon the linemen managed to bring it up. It was a body, or rather, what was left of one. Police arrived and soon determined that the remains were human, and it looked like they had been there for a while. Unfortunately, they could make out little else at the time because the body was so badly decomposed. Much of it had long been scavenged by animals. It was in such bad shape that investigators felt they could not definitely determine the person's sex, though the items they found alongside it gave them some idea. With the body they found a brown leather jacket. In one of the pockets, there was a box of matches from the brand Salem. Other clothing included a knit sweater, jeans, and knee-high heeled boots. Most distinctive of the items was the jewelry, which consisted of a copper necklace with 3 turquoise stones, handmade silver hoop earrings, a shell necklace with a heart pendant, a white shell ring, and a gold Timex watch. Sure enough, forensic testing revealed that the body was indeed female. It also revealed that she had been killed by a stab wound to the spine. However, details such as her age and ethnicity were a bit harder to pin down. She had likely been young, possibly in her late teens or early 20s. She may have been white, but she also could have been Native American. Without this information, it would prove impossible to identify who she had been in life. In the absence of her name, she has since become known as Eklutna Annie. But who was she, really? In 1968, just 1 year after Robert Hansen and his family moved to Alaska, a large oil deposit was discovered in the northern part of the state, and in 1973, the construction of a Trans-Alaskan pipeline was approved by the U.S. Senate. When the pipeline began construction the following year, thousands of workers came from the lower 48. There were so many that the state's population grew by 3%, seemingly overnight. Of course, not everyone had come to work on the pipeline. Businessmen, teachers, and other professionals were in high demand as Anchorage rapidly developed. For some, it was a prosperous time. Those who worked for the oil companies could earn up to $1,000 a week, just over $5,000 in today's currency. But for everyone else, particularly those who had already been living there, the boom brought mostly unwanted changes. The sudden influx of cash caused the costs of living to skyrocket, with rents even tripling in some areas. Those who had come seeking employment found that all the jobs had been taken. Meanwhile, locals who had been getting by just fine for years suddenly found that they couldn't make ends meet, and crime soon spiraled out of control. Where the men and the money went, women would follow. Mobsters wanting their piece of the Alaskan pie quickly opened up shady strip clubs and topless bars. The Colicurcio crime family ran the Talents West agency and lured young, inexperienced women in with promises of good housing and easy money. Operated out of Washington, the agency supplied dancers to Seattle, Honolulu, and Anchorage. Even clubs not affiliated with them were pressured to hire their dancers. A combination of unsafe housing, low wages, and social isolation soon resulted in quite a few desperate women. They took money where they could get it. If it wasn't at a club, maybe it was under a pimp. This was the Anchorage at Robert Hansen returned to after his parole in 1973. After the attempted rape and kidnapping of a young secretary, he only served a few months in prison, where he was diagnosed as a schizophrenic before he was turned to a halfway house and then back to his family. From then on, Hansen regularly sought the services of these women, though his fixation went deeper than just sex. As a teen, he had been ruthlessly bullied by his peers, mostly girls from school, for his stutter and severe acne. Hansen never got over this humiliation, and over the years these feelings morphed into a pathological need to control and punish women. In his mind, there were only two types of women: those who were decent, respectable, and deserved to be protected, and those who were dirty and deserved the harm that came to them. He met one such woman in 1979. The following, according to Bernard Duclos' book Fair Game, is his own version of events. He found her standing in the streets of downtown Anchorage. She was young, pretty. She was a dancer, or maybe she was a prostitute. Hansen could never remember for sure. She also gave a name, but Hansen could never remember that either. The one detail he did remember about her was that she might have come from Kodiak Island. Hansen offered her money for her time, but told her he preferred to do their business in the comfort of his home. The woman agreed and hopped inside his car. Hansen drove on. The woman, getting a little impatient, looked out the window. The area they drove through was getting darker, more spacious. She saw fewer and fewer houses until there weren't any left. And then it hit her. Hansen wasn't taking her to his home, he was driving her out to the middle of nowhere. The woman told him that she was unwilling to go any further with him and demanded to be let out. In response, he took out a handgun and held it to her head. Before long, they were headed down the Eklutna Road, for which she would ultimately be named. It had been rainy that season. Thick mud coated the Eklutna Road, making the drive to Hansen's favorite hunting grounds more dangerous than usual. The wheels of his vehicle got stuck. So, Hansen got out. He ordered the woman, who he was still aiming at, to help him. He made her grab a long metal cable from the trunk and attach it to the winch. Hansen steered, she pulled, and eventually the car could move again. With his eyes on the perilous road again, the woman saw her chance to escape. She ran into the woods, her heart pounding with each stride, but he had seen her. She nearly slipped away, but he caught her by her long hair. The woman reached into her purse and took out a large buck knife. She waved her weapon around to keep him away, but in her terror, she failed to strike a single hit on him. It was easy for Hansen to catch her, disarm her, and throw her to the ground. She begged him not to kill her, and he told her he wouldn't, but the truth was that she worried him. There was nothing he hated more than losing control of a situation, and when that happened, there was only one way to get it back. That much he knew from experience, and she must have known so too. The woman, still on her hands and knees, did not look up at him again. All she could do now was cry. Hansen picked up her knife and drove the blade into her spine. Robert Hansen had always been a skilled hunter. Since his youth, hunting had been his only reprieve from the misery of his daily life. By the 70s, he had collected all kinds of trophies, and even broke a few records. He had killed many, many things in his time. CO.AG was just the first of a very different type of game. The butcher baker's long hunt ended around 4 years later. After one of his would-be victims narrowly escaped him, Robert Hansen was apprehended by police on October 27, 1983. In the time between killing CO.AG and his capture, he was believed to have killed upwards of 17 women and committed countless assaults. In the end, he was only convicted of having murdered 4 women, CO.AG being one of them. It was partly Hansen's own habits that were his undoing. You see, Hansen owned a small plane which, due to his documented mental health issues, he never got the proper permission to fly. Not that it ever stopped him. He kept an aviation map hidden within the walls of his home that was uncovered right before the end of a police search. On the map were several red X's that corresponded to locations where authorities had found the bodies of murdered women, and others that had not yet been searched or even suspected. When presented with this evidence, Hansen agreed to help police locate the exact spots where he hid the remains of his victims. In April of the following year, Hansen led police to Horseshoe Lake in Palmer, Alaska. There, they dug up the skeleton of a woman believed to have been in her late teens to early 20s. Her remains were so decomposed that a reconstruction of her face was not considered possible. For almost 40 years, she was known only as Horseshoe Harriet. Thankfully, modern technology made it possible to identify her. DNA was taken from the body in 2014, and in October 2021, she was finally identified as 19-year-old Robin Pelkey. Originally from Colorado, she moved to Anchorage with her parents in the early 80s. For unknown reasons, she was never reported missing, and her parents have both since passed away. Tragic as her case was, it does offer a tiny glimmer of hope. Perhaps this same genetic technology can also be used to reclaim CO.AG's true identity. One day, someone trying to learn about the genes that run in their family might find themselves matching with this unknown forgotten woman. She had been excluded as being the following women: Roxanne Eastland, Megan Emmerich, Teresa Davis, Karen Evan, and Andrea Altieri. All of these women were believed to have met Hansen and disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Robert Hansen, the most prolific serial killer in Alaska's history, died of natural causes at the age of 75 on August 21, 2014. For years, we had only his murky recollections to go on when it came to his unknown victim. Now that he's gone, we have even less. For now, all we can do is speculate. Who really was CO.AG? Where is her family? Is there anyone who misses her? Anyone who is still hoping for her to come home? And are there any more secrets still buried in the snow of the last frontier?
Hi there, I'm Public Universal Enemy. Thanks so much for making it to the end of this video. I'm sorry for using text-to-speech. I know it's not really popular, but as I'm sure you can tell, I don't really have access to very good equipment at the moment, though I am working on fixing that as soon as possible. Still, if you like this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. It definitely gives me the incentive to keep improving. Thanks!